Again, this is a developing story. There has been an explosion.
Absolutely shocking.
Strange is happening in the skies above Costa Rica. Look at this on your screen right now. What is that? An iridescent, multicolored cloud is leaving people very confused. Pictures and video of this cloud has flooded social media, with many saying it's the sign of the end of the times.
He was accused of jaywalking. Video shows at first one police officer getting into it with 16-year-old Emilio Mayfield.
The teen yells, "Get off of me." The officer shouts, "Stop resisting arrest," while using a baton.
The downpour continued as trash cans surfed down the road and arroyos quickly filled up. That recycling bin never stood a chance, as the Han Arroyo looked more like a raging river. And it wasn't just the rain. Gusty winds battered this tree downtown, and a local user sent us this shot of a tree branch that blew over onto 2 cars.
Stop resisting! Get off! Stop resisting! Get out!
Can you get off of him?
Stop
It's a
resisting!
kid! It's a kid! Get the f*** off of him!
We're getting new details about a violent arrest of an unarmed black teen earlier this week in California. He was accused of jaywalking. Video shows at first one police officer getting into it with 16-year-old Emilio Mayfield.
The teen yells, "Get off of me." The officer shouts, "Stop resisting arrest," while using a baton. 3 other officers arrived and took him down. Mayfield will have to appear in juvenile court for 2 citations. His family filed a complaint, and the Stockton police are investigating.
For decades now, we've been watching Kilauea crater erupt plumes of lava and even recently threaten nearby towns. Kilauea is a much smaller version of Mauna Loa.
As KITV4's Laurie Amata reports, some new activity on Mauna Loa has scientists raising eyebrows and raising warning levels.
In the spring of 1984, Mauna Loa came alive. Erupting for 3 weeks as rivers of lava flowed as fast as 700 feet an hour, funneling into the sea and marching within a few miles of Hilo town.
Overall, though, we were fortunate in that it didn't actually get into what we consider population centers.
USGS geologist Frank Truesdell has been watching Mauna Loa for decades. He says the volcano calmed down for a while. And in 2004, an increase in earthquakes to about 150 a month bumped up warning levels. Now, he says, that's happening again.
People have a tendency to forget that Mauna Loa is an active volcano. And when Mauna Loa erupts, there are large voluminous lava flows. And because Mauna Loa comprises about 50% of the surface area of the Big Island, it can send flows in almost any direction.
In 1984, scientists recorded 3 years of increased earthquake activity before Mauna Loa erupted. In 1975, it took just 1 year. Truesdell says Mauna Loa has erupted 33 times in 170 years, on average about every 5 years. Right now, only Kilauea is providing the fireworks. Its source, only a small fraction, though, compared to the molten mass hidden under its much bigger sister. As for Mauna Loa's last eruption,
what Kilauea erupts in 1 day, Mauna Loa erupted in 20 minutes.
A constant reminder of what's rumbling below.
The volcano is basically slowly waking up. And it doesn't mean an eruption is imminent, but it's a signal to the residents of Hawaii that Mauna Loa is still an active volcano.
Laura Yamada, KITV4 News.
Strange is happening in the skies above Costa Rica. Look at this on your screen right now. What is that? An iridescent, multicolored cloud is leaving people very confused. Pictures and video of this cloud has flooded social media, with many saying it's the sign of the end of the times. Others say it's a sign of God. Experts say there is no need to panic. They explain the cloud is caused by a rare weather phenomenon called cloud iridescence. The same phenomenon happened last month in South Carolina.
Look at it. Look at it, just take them.
Are those trees?
Look at it. Yeah. It's debris. Look at the little branches and stuff that it's taken.
No, that's a tree.
That's not a whole tree. It's just a branch, Devin. Look at it. There it goes.
My fire truck is
You're all right.
No, it's going that way.
Put another one right up here.
Going that way. It might hit our house.
Still going that direction? Well, that one is.
Going towards our house, my house. Here comes the rain.
Tonight, there is a worrying development for America's air war over Syria. The Pentagon says that Russian fighter jets have now arrived in Syria in support of the Assad dictatorship. This raises the prospect of U.S. and Russian warplanes in the same skies fighting on opposite sides. Here's Chip Reed.
In addition to the fighter jets, these satellite photos of the base taken in the last few days also show Russian helicopters, transport aircraft, tanks, and armored personnel carriers. Some U.S. intelligence analysts believe the weapons could be used to attack rebel forces, threatening the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, Russia's longtime ally, but an enemy of the U.S. One U.S. official recently said Russian military intervention in Syria would be a game changer, creating the potential for run-ins with U.S. warplanes that are conducting airstrikes against ISIS in Syria. Today, in an effort to avoid potential conflict between the U.S. and Russia, Secretary of Defense Ash Carter spoke by phone with Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. In a statement, the Pentagon called it a constructive conversation. In London today, Secretary of State John Kerry addressed the escalating U.S.-Russian tensions.
I think everybody is seized by the urgency. We have been all along, but the migration levels, the continued destruction, the danger of potential augmentation by any unilateral moves really puts a high premium on diplomacy at this moment.
Earlier this month, Russian President Vladimir Putin said intervention in Syria is, quote, not yet on our agenda. But, Scott, some U.S. officials fear that given the latest developments, his agenda just might have changed.
Chip Reed at the Pentagon this evening. Chip, thanks.
Doritos has a new way for you to taste the rainbow. Sorry about that, Skittles. The company is partnering with It Gets Better to raise funds for the organization, which aims to end bullying of the LGBT community. Doritos will come in 5 colors matching the pride flag, but all will be Cool Ranch flavored. That's kind of a bummer. They are available by making a donation at itgetsbetter.org. Very cool.
Dramatic rescue to show you an RV fully engulfed in flames in Mount Pocono, Pennsylvania. The vehicle rolling backwards down the street, setting fire to cars and power lines. A local Navy veteran, Christopher Shulmanaki, rushed to the rescue of a woman who was still inside that vehicle, pulling her out of the burning RV.
Climbed inside the RV on my hands and knees, and I felt around, and I found her about, I'd say, more than 3/4 of the way towards the back, where the bedroom is. I found her unconscious. So I picked her up, and I drug her all the way to the stairs.
The hero and the victim were treated for smoke inhalation, but both are now out of the hospital. There could have been such a loss of life there.
Incredible when you see this video.
Terrifying. A ball of fire.
Good man.
What a hero.
Yeah.
Monday morning, the calm after the storm on Friday night. The bleachers blown over, left crumpled on the field. The scoreboard now just a pile of metal. Inside the school, the roof of the gym rocked so hard debris fell on the court.
This isn't good, but it could have been a whole lot worse.
It is rapidly rotating. It is now on the ground.
News Chopper 9 tracking the tornado in the air as Friday night football was just about to kick off at Cass Midway. Surveillance video from that night shows people rushing inside, referees and firefighters trying to get everyone to safety. People frantically running to shelter, some barely making it into the school when the tornado hit. The winds throwing around water tanks, pushing over trailers, debris filling the air.
The winds we got were probably in the 85 to 95 mile per hour range.
Luckily, nobody was hurt, but it could have been a different story if school officials didn't act quickly.
You know, the bricks and mortar and bleachers and things like that, that can all get fixed, but, you know, we just want the people to be safe.
The aftermath left on the football field for now, but that soon will be picked up. The Vikings have another game to play on Friday.
A precarious position to be in, digging for your belongings underneath your once drivable trailer, now flipped upside down thanks to last night's tornado. This mobile home in Hillsdale Lake, one of the hardest hit, 2 confirmed EF1 tornadoes. The National Weather Service assessment team on the ground today in Miami County.
Looks like the damage path was a little bit intermittent, where the tornado maybe touched down, lifted, touched down again, lifted.
Moving west to east, it tore through mostly rural areas, bringing with it winds up to 110 miles per hour. Multiple homes completely destroyed.
The amazing thing to me is that while there were a few injuries, no fatalities, so we're all thankful for that.
The United States Congress does not fulfill its responsibility to pass a budget today. Much of the United States government will be forced to shut down tomorrow. And I want to be very clear about what that shutdown would mean, what will remain open and what will not. Office buildings would close, paychecks will be delayed, vital services that seniors and veterans, women and children, businesses and our economy depend on would be hamstrung. I think it's important that everybody understand the federal government is America's largest employer. More than 2 million civilian workers and 1.4 million active duty military serve in all 50 states and all around the world. In the event of a government shutdown, hundreds of thousands of these dedicated public servants who stay on the job will do so without pay. And several hundred thousand more will be immediately and indefinitely furloughed without pay. What, of course, will not be furloughed are the bills that they have to pay, their mortgages, their tuition payments, their car notes. These Americans are our neighbors. Their kids go to our schools. They worship where we do. They serve their country with pride. They are the customers of every business in this country, and they would be hurt greatly. And as a consequence, all of us will be hurt greatly should Congress choose to shut the people's government down. 5 years ago, right now, our economy was in meltdown. Today, our businesses have created 7.5 million new jobs over the past 3.5 years. The housing market is healing, and our deficits are falling fast. The idea of putting the American people's hard-earned progress at risk is the height of irresponsibility. And it doesn't have to happen. Let me repeat this. It does not have to happen. All of this is entirely preventable if the House chooses to do what the Senate has already done. And that's the simple act of funding our government without making extraneous and controversial demands in the process.
It's home, but these days it feels like a prison cell. Israeli forces have put 14-year-old Yehia Derbas under house arrest after accusing him of throwing stones during a protest in occupied East Jerusalem. He says his life has been turned upside down.
Now I go to sleep at 4 a.m. I wake up at 2 p.m. I have breakfast around 3 p.m. At 7 p.m. I have lunch. Everything changed in my life.
It's been a month and he has 5 more to go until his trial. He's been denied his right to go to school. While we interview him, his mother starts to cry. She asks why such harsh procedures have been applied to a child. Yehia was taken here to the Russian Compound Detention Center in West Jerusalem after being arrested. He was kept for 15 days before being transferred to a prison. His family tells us he was interrogated without a family member being present and that he was handcuffed, shackled and slapped while being questioned about whether he threw stones or not. The Israeli government recently passed a law where stone throwers can receive up to a 10-year prison sentence. And following increased tensions in Jerusalem over this past week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wants to push through even harsher measures.
The present situation is unacceptable, and we intend to give soldiers and police officers the tools necessary to act very firmly against those who throw stones and firebombs. We're also going to adopt changes in the rules of engagement and for minimum sentence against those who throw stones and firebombs.
Liat Seimal is an Israeli human rights lawyer who has been defending Palestinians for decades.
They try to find some momentary solutions to impose more punishments, to impose more pressure, believing that somehow they will, the whole population, both in Jerusalem and in the occupied territories, they will settle down, they will accept the occupation, they will agree to be occupied, to be denied of rights, etc., etc.
Back at Yehia's house, his friends play football downstairs, but he can't join them. We ask him what stone throwing symbolizes for the Palestinian youth.
We have nothing to fight with. That's why the stone is a weapon.
His mother says she's trying to stay strong, but she dreads the outcome of his pending trial, that her young son, who loves to ride his bike and play football, could end up in prison. Stephanie Decker, Al Jazeera, West Jerusalem.
A chemical leak from a fertilizer plant in central China's Henan province has left at least 20 people hospitalized. 5 are in critical condition. Residents nearby said they heard loud noises and saw smoke that had a pungent smell. The gas has been tested as synthetic ammonia, a major component in producing chemical fertilizers. A total of 300 kilograms of the gas was leaked. Authorities say the situation is now under control.
As more cases are registered, people here worry that a cholera epidemic could break out again. The last epidemic, 8 years ago, affected nearly 7,000 people. Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi has ordered daily water tests and other measures to try and contain the disease. But it's not enough for some.
My husband went into hospital 2 days ago. He had dysentery and was vomiting because of the water. We haven't had clean water for 2 years. It was cut off, so we had to dig wells to drink and wash out of.
Hospital laboratory experts say the crisis could have been avoided if there were simple measures to provide clean water.
Abu Ghraib is currently suffering from cholera outbreak. We had 4 people died yesterday as a result. The Baghdad governor, the director of Baghdad Health Directorate, has visited the hospital here to look at the situation, but we are not putting in proper measures.
Health experts say that the outbreak may spread because of the high number of displaced people living in local refugee camps. They've escaped the fighting in Anbar province, and doctors fear the disease will be difficult to contain if it spreads in the camps. Doctors at this hospital are worried that they won't be able to cope with a large outbreak of cholera. They say that the government isn't doing enough to provide clean drinking water. Now, one of the things that you do need for clean drinking water is chlorine tablets, and they say here that the government isn't supplying them with enough. Imran Khan, Al Jazeera, Abu Ghraib.
Back at 524. Well, you know, it's not a matter of if, but when. That's what we're hearing over and over again from the biggest experts in geology regarding a big earthquake here.
That's right. That's why KOIN 6 is dedicating every day this week to helping you get ready for the next big Cascadia earthquake. Eileen Park has a preview.
That's right. It can happen tomorrow. It can happen next week. It could also happen in 50 years, but we know it's coming. Still, it's hard to visualize just how devastating it's going to be, since at least in our generation, we haven't seen a 9.0 magnitude earthquake in the Pacific Northwest. So I asked Dr. Chris Goldfinger, one of the most sought after experts on this topic, who also happens to be a professor of geology at OSU, if there's a similar earthquake we can compare to. And turns out it's the 2011 Tohoku earthquake in Japan. Their coast was completely destroyed. Nearly 19,000 people were dead or missing, hundreds of thousands displaced. Dr. Goldfinger explains why we're due for a major earthquake.
North America has been sort of behaving like a spring for the last 300 years. When it finally lets go and the leading edge of North America reaches the breaking point and lets go, it's going to snap forward and up, and that's what generates the tsunami. And the coastline, where my knuckles are, is going to go down.
So only on KOIN News at 6 and 11 tonight, I explain just about everything you need to know about our next big earthquake. Back to you.
You know, you were talking to us before about what could happen if we have these tremendous wildfire seasons. And with these wildfires that are currently underway in California, do you have any sense of economic impact so far?
Yeah, we sure do, Kate, although it's still early. Of course, when we talked in early July, our worst fears were that the cumulative impact of the drought was going to leave us really, really exposed to wildfires this year. And in fact, we've pretty much seen that. So to date, just sort of piggybacking on what Wolf just mentioned, we've burned about 700,000 acres in California, which compares to about 500,000 normally. So we're well above average. That's continuing to ramp up. And so far, just to give you sort of a tally here, we've been looking at about 1,000 homes that have been burned. That's going to equal about $1 billion insured losses at least. And generally, those insured losses only represent a fraction of the total economic impact. That's usually 10 or 20 times higher. So we're seeing the worst of what we'd expected, and unfortunately, it's not close to over.
You know, the firefighters that are out there putting their lives at risk, is that costing, you know, taxpayers more?
Yeah, it certainly is. In fact, the Forest Service expects that we're going to need probably almost $1 billion more in budgets here over the next 10 years to be able to deal with this increasing problem. So the overall effect of the fires in California and, in fact, the entire West is going to have an economic impact that will reverberate across the country ultimately.
Do you think the worst of the fire season is over, or does the risk just continue from here?
Unfortunately, I think the risk just continues. So we're typically in California, the fire season really peaks in September and October. When in October and September, we see the Santa Ana winds kick in, which is that offshore flow that's dry and it continues this risk. The only sort of saving grace that we have is that it looks like we're starting to see some precipitation move into California early. In fact, we saw flooding rains in Los Angeles, ironically. So that'll be a little bit of a help, but we've got a long way to go before we're out of the risk.
This is definitely not what you expect when you park your car for work or to run an errand. So imagine their surprise when the owners returned to see this. A car park in southern China collapsed after heavy rains, sending 2 cars tumbling over an embankment and leaving a pickup truck dangling over the edge. Fortunately, no injuries were reported, and workers eventually got a crane to pull the truck back onto firm ground. I'm Matt Sampson, The Weather Channel.
He's brash, a multimillionaire, and taking a lot of heat for that decision to raise the price of a drug to treat cancer and AIDS patients more than 5,000%. Now Turing Pharmaceuticals CEO and founder Martin Shkreli is backing down.
We've agreed to lower the price of Daraprim to a point that is more affordable and is able to allow the company to make a profit, but a very small profit, and we think these changes will be welcomed.
The The drug in question is called Daraprim. It's used to treat a potentially deadly parasitic infection, which can affect people with compromised immune systems. It used to cost $13.50 per pill. Turing changed the cost to a whopping $750 per pill. Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton blasted that rate hike this afternoon.
That's price gouging, pure and simple.
The Infectious Diseases Society of America and the HIV Medicine Association sent a joint letter to Shkreli calling the increase unjustifiable for the medically vulnerable patient population. In a previous interview with CBS News, Shkreli called the increase an altruistic move that would have helped fund research.
With these new profits, we can spend all of that upside on these patients who sorely need a new drug, in my opinion.
The 32-year-old, not new to controversy. In 2013, while serving as CEO of the biopharmaceutical company Retrophin, he allegedly harassed an employee, writing in a letter shown in this court document, "I hope to see you and your 4 children homeless, and will do whatever I can to assure this." Last month, Retrophin sued him for $65 million, saying Shkreli used his control over Retrophin to enrich himself. Shkreli called the allegations baseless, then went to Twitter, quoting the hip-hop group Wu-Tang Clan, posting, "I am not the one to with."
It's hard to believe that somebody could be so driven by greed.
The spokesman for an organization called the Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington has been critical of Shkreli for years.
I'm not surprised by it, and he's somebody who seems to be willing to play fast and loose with the rules, take advantage of the system, and is really driven by his own profit over everything else.
Doctors, patients, and some politicians like Hillary Clinton are outraged by a company's decision to raise the price of a life-saving drug by more than 5,000%. A former hedge fund manager bought the rights to a drug called Daraprim that can cure infections common among people with AIDS. I looked into whether this was legal, moral, or neither.
For us to try to exist and maintain a profit, I think is pretty reasonable.
In a recent CNBC interview, Turing Pharmaceutical CEO Martin Shkreli is referring to his decision to raise the price of an infection-fighting drug, Daraprim, from $13.50 to $750 per pill, even though the drug costs about $1 to make and has been around since the 1950s. The revelation, reported in the New York Times, prompted Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton to tweet, "Price gouging like this in the specialty drug market is outrageous. Tomorrow, I'll lay out a plan to take it on."
The system permits him to do this. It is not a nice thing to do, and it has nothing to do with the health and welfare of people who need those incredible drugs.
Dr. Jay Wolfson says the trick is balancing the need for pharmaceutical companies to make a profit and invest in new technology against the need for patients to have access to life-saving drugs. Jarring price hikes aren't limited to AIDS treatments either. Common drugs like the anti-inflammatory naproxen have shot up from $44 a bottle to $944 in just a few years. Dr. Wilson is skeptical Hillary Clinton or any other politician can easily solve the problem of pharmaceutical price gouging.
That's a difficult debate, and it's fraught with lots of political influence and financial influence, and it's not going to be settled easily.
And it doesn't look like Daraprim's new owner is going to budge on the price.
In response to all of this attention and doctors and patient groups saying they can't access this drug, are you going to change the price?
No.
Well, there you have it. In his defense, Shkreli says the higher price will help finance research into making a new improved version of that drug. But some HIV doctors say the current drug works fine and they don't need another version.
Ominous clouds filled the skies, and before long, the skies opened up and the downpour was on.
We've seen it coming from the southwest, and it started when we came back on the service road. It started coming down, and we had to stop at a filling station.
Heavy rains turned city streets dangerous in a hurry as floodwaters began to swallow intersections and roads. Check out San Mateo and Montgomery, where cars battled through gushing waters. And right outside our KOAT studios, look at what happened on Comanche and Carlisle. The intersection flooded, cars stuck. Firefighters had to push some of them to safety. Firefighters came and stopped traffic, hoping to stop others from getting stuck. Carol Champion was on her way home from the grocery store when she ran into this mess.
It was beautiful when I went down there, and I come into this, and I can't even get home now.
The downpour continued as trash cans surfed down the road and arroyos quickly filled up. That recycling bin never stood a chance as the Han Arroyo looked more like a raging river. And it wasn't just the rain. Gusty winds battered this tree downtown, and a local user sent us this shot of a tree branch that blew over onto 2 cars. And to top it all off, hail building up on sidewalks and streets. Within a few hours, those ominous clouds passed and the sun returned. But even though it was short-lived, this quick storm won't be forgotten for some time. Matt Howerton, KOAT.